Welcome to the Ballet Help Desk podcast. My name is Jenny, and I am joined by my co-founder, Brett. We are both proud ballet moms who met backstage at our children's recital. During our kids' training, we found that resources were limited, and we relied on dance magazines and fellow parents in the lobby for information. Now that our children are embarking on their professional careers, we are excited to share our combined 20 years of experience as ballet moms with all of you. We will be bringing in experts to help make sense of this complex world of ballet training. Hello. Today, we continue our series on ballet competitions. We are so pleased to be joined by Peter Merz. He is the Regional Tour Director for American Dance Competition, as well as a ballet master teacher, invited to teach at studios all throughout the U.S. He has choreographed scores of ballets ranging from solo works for students to larger ensemble pieces for professional companies. He has won several awards for his choreography, including being named Outstanding Choreographer on many occasions by the Youth America Grand Prix. While his ballets are rooted in classical technique, they also rely heavily on his passion for contemporary dance. His aesthetic seeks to explore the boundaries of classical vocabulary and keep this idiom vital for today's audiences. Let's jump right into the conversation.
Hello, I'm Brett Gardner, and I am with my co-founder of Ballet Help Desk, Jenny Wong. And today we are fortunate enough to be joined by Peter Merz. He is the regional director for ADC IBC, which is a well-known ballet competition. So Peter, welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity.
So let's jump right in. We want to talk about competition today and all of the different aspects of it. What is something special or different about ADC that you really would like dancers to know? We
thought very carefully about how we wanted to expand what had been just a one-week event in Florida when we went into regionals. So one thing that we are pretty proud of is we have always, as part of our finals, the first round included compulsory classwork in much the same fashion as Prix de Lausanne. We have done that now in all of our regional cities. Every dancer takes a ballet class first. And up until this year, I've actually taught all of the classes. The idea being that every dancer has the same class and they are evaluated by our jury panels first. And then that score is averaged into the scores for what they prepare. What we like about that is we really want to encourage dancers to focus primarily on technique, to working on their technique. It's our belief that technique is freedom, that the more technical skill you work on, the more versatile you are as an artist, the more choices you're able to make. So it was really important to us that be primary in our competition. Presents some logistical issues, but we feel really good about that it gives the dancers the opportunity to present a more complete picture of themselves as young artists. So that's something we really like.
How does the rubric work in terms of evaluating the students in the technique class?
We don't have a specific rubric. Each dancer is evaluated on 4 center exercises: adagio, a tendu with a pirouette moving across the floor, and an allegro. The philosophy is the way to get to sort of an objective evaluation of a dancer's ability is to have expert judges and have more than one of them. So you have the 3 judges, and I'm sure that most dancers and parents are familiar with this. One judge, you might be exactly their cup of tea, and they give you hundreds across the board. The other judge might think that your technique is atrocious, and so you won't score as well, and the median sort of works itself out. That, in my thinking, is sort of the best way to arrive at an objective evaluation of a dancer in what is very much a subjective art form. You have to just kind of rely on experts and average their scores. We had talked about possibly trying to come up with a rubric, but the issue is that would still be subject to the subjective perspective of each judge. So it seemed eventually like just another complication that wouldn't really have helped add anything to the competition and would have meant more work on the back end.
Is the jury panel the same for for the kids that are being judged in the classes versus the stage work?
Yes, each city, it's the same jury panel all the way through the weekend. Unless, I mean, there have been situations where there was a scheduling issue and we had to bring somebody in. But really, we try and have the same jury panel in each city for the entire event. It's also important to us that the jury sees the dancers in class first. So they're seeing them technically in material that's unfamiliar to everybody before they get to see their prepared material.
Competition season is actually hitting right now. Like regionals are starting to take place. I saw that the ad that you guys just put up about the San Francisco regional. What are some guiding principles that you think students should follow in order to have a successful experience? And what I mean by successful, it doesn't necessarily equate with placing.
The most important thing is to focus on the idea that each event is another tool to receive feedback and work on honing your own technique. As long as you are focused on improving and becoming better through each experience, I think that's really going to be the most successful attitude to bring towards certainly competition. Any other aspect, any class you take, any performance you are a part of, any rehearsal that you're in, just focus on the incremental improvement you can make today. I also think another thing that it's important for dancers to think of when participating in any regional or any final is it's very important who you know as a performing artist. And that's not just the jury panel, and it's not just your friends or teachers. It's how are you presenting yourself to all the other participants, including the other parents and the other teachers? The way that performing artists are most successful over the course of their career is by having a large and broad network of professional contacts. And it's never too early to start making that. So thinking about how you present yourself professionally, and I know that might sound a little daunting to 9-year-olds. When you see the same dancer over the course of 10 years sometimes, it's really gratifying to see somebody who was very promising as a 9-year-old, who made a good impression then, who continues to develop in a way that is professional and pleasant. And I say this to dancers all the time. I still work with people that I was in the studio with when I was 9 years old. Being aware of those relationships, you never know exactly where they might lead you 10, 20, 30 years down the road. Focusing on developing and nurturing good professional relationships is
that's fantastic. My son, when he was 10, he did like a 1-week dance thing at the Broadway Dance Center in New York. Yeah. My in-laws live there. Somebody from some aid, like a talent agent, came in and sat them all down. And the piece of advice that they gave him that has stuck with him ever since is you're always auditioning. No matter whether you're sitting next to someone on an airplane or you're at a class or you're even in an audience, you are always being judged on that first impression. And you better make sure that you present yourself in a way that you would want to be perceived well.
Yeah. I might refocus that a little bit to say you are always building your social network.
Right, exactly.
And because we're a performing art form, that is incredibly important to us. We don't go into our studio and paint. We go on stage and we have to make a connection with an audience. And you often don't have that long to make a connection to keep their attention. So the skill of being able to connect is really important. And ballet is it's an interesting creature. People tend to self-select ballet who are introverts, who also like to be on stage in front of a lot of people. It's a weird combination of personality traits. So sometimes that networking skill is not very natural for ballet dancers. So the opportunity to practice it, especially in a more high pressure situation, can often be revealing.
That's really interesting. And which leads me to my next question is, what are some mistakes that you see first-time competitors make when they come to your competition?
Focusing on the competition, focusing on the competitive nature of the event, I think is the worst. Treating it like it's a sports event. In a sports event, the ultimate goal is to determine the winner, who has the best time, who has scored the most goals. That is the focus of the event. every arts competition in the world these days, the end goal of winning or placing is really secondary to the goal of making a connection. So it's kind of, you're not trying to dominate, or you shouldn't be trying to dominate. I think that's really, because again, going back to the impression that you're making, people are not going to want to work with somebody who seems aggressive or negative. So when I see a dancer who seems more focused on dominating the competition as opposed to presenting themselves in the best possible light and being courteous to the people around them, that would be one of the biggest mistakes I see.
Okay.
The other is coming to it feeling unprepared. You can always rehearse more. You can always take more classes. You're never done preparing. So if you feel like I'm just not ready for this, the day has arrived, you are ready. You're as ready as you're going to be for that day. So worrying about not being ready is not productive. Focusing on what you can do in the moment, I think, is much more productive, much more healthy.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice, and helpful for the kids who may be a little nervous too about how they're going to do going in. So, what do you believe the role of parents should be in competitions?
The biggest role is support. I don't have to tell you the hours of driving, the hours of waiting in the parking lot. My daughter dances with Indianapolis Ballet and did many competitions throughout her life. So the travel and all of that is very important. I think that parents need to be aware of the impression that they are making as well on the organizers of the event, on the other parents, the other participants. I've often been in the situation where a parent was with their dancer and there was, say, a costume problem or a music issue, and another parent would just volunteer to help. And that little connection can be the seed that leads to, a friendship down the road or another opportunity. I've also seen parents who, especially who don't have a performing or arts background, they will sometimes treat the event like it's a sports event. Like the idea is to dominate the field or intimidate the competition. It's a natural response. I mean, it says competition in the title. So it seems like what you should do is dominate the field. But focusing on the broader goals of an arts competition means that you also want to be aware that it is always a pathway to the ultimate goal, which is a career. Parents who are supportive and who add to a general feeling of congeniality, I think are most helpful to their dancers.
Sure. So are there some things that you guys are doing within your own competition to kind of foster that kind of culture as opposed to that much more competitive spirit?
One thing that we do is at the conclusion of the performing part of the competition and before our awards ceremony, we always host a question and answer period. And we invite all the dancers, all the teachers and coaches, and all of the parents. And we try and encourage questions from all of those different constituencies so that everybody has a chance to ask their questions and to hear what questions other people who are in the same situation but at different studios might have. That's a conscious effort to try and demystify, but also to encourage a community feeling. So that is one thing that we definitely try and do at every regional. Have not done that at finals, but finals are kind of a different beast. But at the regionals, we feel we do have the opportunity. We also, that panel, I tend to moderate it. The questions are asked of the jury. And that's the other thing is we're trying to help foster a bridge between our jury who are all professionals in the dance world and these parents who might not have any connection, who might not have talked to somebody from one of the bigger schools or an artistic director of a company. Often the tradition in ballet has been there's the artistic director and artistic staff are kind of in an ivory tower and beyond approach. We really are trying to humanize them because most of them are actually very nice people and like to talk about what they do and want to make that connection.
Do you find any trends in terms of the types of questions that are asked of your panel?
I mean, the number one question is, how can we be better? And, the answer is do more tendus. Another question that happens a lot is there's a lot of curiosity, especially among the parents, about how our jury navigated their careers. which is, I think, a very interesting thing for them to have the opportunity to ask these dance professionals. I really like that often each jury member will have very different answers to that question, because I think it really helps parents understand that, unfortunately, it's not like law school where you go to college and then you go to law school and then you pass the bar and then you are an associate for, whatever. There isn't a single pathway to a successful career as a dancer. And so seeing that career path can sometimes be meandering and is almost always very individualistic.
Mhm.
There are common threads amongst a lot of us, but I think that realizing that scary feeling that they're not quite sure what's going on is something that we all have, actually. It's kind of a shared humanity. We are all making it up as we go along. I find comfort in that. And I'm hoping that our parents do too.
Absolutely. And some advice that my daughter got really early was say yes and see where it takes you.
Yes.
Because you never quite know where an opportunity is going to lead. And honestly, the two biggest experiences my daughter has had was literally because she said yes at the last minute. I think people underestimate just being open to receiving whatever. Can you talk a little bit about the age breakdowns for ADC? Because the senior level seems to be quite a large age range.
Yeah. The primary age is really, we look at it as a sort of pre-point work age. The hard part comes in discerning once a dancer has had enough experience on point to really perform on point. The difference between a 12-year-old and a 16-year-old can be vast. But the difference between a very serious 16-year-old and a very serious 19 or 20-year-old, there tends to be a flattening of that curve, just in the sense that, a fairly accomplished 16-year-old, it's a matter of smaller degrees in what separates them from a professional. Often, the biggest deciding factor is physical development. It's kind of when does the dancer hit their growth spurt or finish puberty? Some people don't. My mom grew an inch her freshman year of college when she was 19. My daughter was 5 foot, I should say 5'8.5". That's what's on her resume, when she was 13, and she still is. Yeah. One of the things about developing early is you have that body for a long time, so you can train your adult body. That really kind of that age breakdown comes down to that by 15, 16, you are at the probably well on your way towards understanding what your adult instrument is going to be. And then after that, it's a matter of continuing to refine your technique. But in the junior age category is where you'll see the most variability in terms of developmental stages and therefore ability to perform well.
Is that why you broke your categories into 2-year increments as opposed to doing a larger increment in the junior category?
Yes, primarily.
You have the rule of 13 and 14, it's required for them to be on point, correct?
Yes.
Can you speak to that 11, 12-year-old category? Is it an advantage to go on point in your variation score-wise? Does that help you, or does it sometimes hinder you?
I think it's more of a hindrance than a help, honestly. I think that point work is such an extreme technique, really, in terms of both development of ability and really the risk of permanent physical injury. I think that encouraging people to dance, to perform on point, who have not had enough time to develop the strength and the coordination necessary to do it, is really dangerous. Having said that, in order to have a really serious potential for a professional career, by 13 or 14, you should be able to perform a variation on point. It's just going to take you that much longer to get to the professional level. But there are plenty of variations that are accessible for dancers of that age. And so you kind of need to be able to perform them on point by that point. In my experience from judging, I have never seen anybody deduct points for somebody doing a variation at 11 or 12 on flat that we're used to seeing on point. I don't think it's an advantage. I definitely have seen people who were on point who were not ready to. I have seen that hurt their score.
So why do you think so many teachers really do encourage their kids to do it on point? I mean, there does seem to be this thing where kids are doing too much too fast. Why do you think that is such a prevalent thing where everyone feels like they have to at 11 or 12 really do, very intricate point work at a very young age?
Wow,
I know it's a big loaded question. I'm sorry.
that feels like a minefield. And I really don't want to I don't want to try and get into other people's heads too much.
Sure, we can take out the teacher question. More just, why do you think people are doing so much so fast? We can take that teacher thing out because I know that gets tricky.
Yeah.
I saw it with my own daughter.
I think it comes back to focusing on the competitiveness rather than the process. I think that people think that it gives them an advantage as a performer. Look what I can do. Our jury panel they're not just experts in the artistic side of the dance world. We really look for jury members who are teachers and who have teaching experience at several different age levels. And they all pretty much have pretty strong opinions about what is age appropriate in terms of technique. And if you don't have the long experience to understand that it's not really advantageous to be on point too young in a performance, that it really takes a year or two minimum of point work in the studio, in class, going slowly, building the coordination appropriately, you might think that it would be an advantage to show off what you can do on point. I would like to emphasize strongly that it is my opinion that is not an advantage. It is much better. I like to talk about, if you think about like a bullseye, a dartboard target, in the middle of the dartboard is what a dancer's comfort zone should be. And that's where you should compete. That's where you should audition. And that's where you should perform. You should know that everything that you can do, that you're comfortable doing everything. That's where you should be in those special occasions where there's going to be a high emotional component anyway. Right outside of the comfort zone is the learning zone, which is where you should live. And it shouldn't be comfortable. It should be, you should be feeling stretched and pushed all the time that you're in class, that you're in rehearsal, not in performance, not in auditions, and not in competition, but most of your life is spent in that learning zone. Outside of that is the freak out zone. Like if anybody asked me to do a tap dance, that's where I would live, is in the freak out zone. As much as I would love to be a tapper, I've just never spent the time to learn how to do it. That's where you will find yourself if you stray out of your comfort zone in a high pressure situation.
On that note, the whole like competition versus learning. Mm-hmm. We got a question we've actually gotten this question several times about dancers who go to multiple regionals. And, it's like a school almost shops the students around from regional to regional. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Funny. One of my dear, who is not with us anymore, Shelley King, who was at YGP for so many years, we talked about that at one point. She said, I see this dancer 3 weekends in a row, you're not going to have enough time to improve your technique. And I couldn't agree with her more. I do feel like, sometimes you get a different panel and from city to city. And there is definitely not every dancer is every artistic director's cup of tea. There are times, I think, when, if you feel like your score is close to that edge, could make sense to go to another regional. It's not as easy for a dancer to do with ADC because we close registration a month before each regional. So it's not like you can get a score in one city in January and that weekend register for another place. That's just the way we do things. And I will say, as a coach and a teacher, there might be times where I would look at, say, you did really well, but something was off this weekend. Do you want to try another regional and see if a different jury panel might look at you differently? Or maybe you just will have a better weekend next weekend. So I don't think that if you have the resources and the time, I don't know that it's necessarily a terrible thing. I also conversely don't think that it's a guarantee. It could be that you're just throwing good money after bad sometimes. Another thing that also is true about a lot of regionals, I know this is true at YGP and it's certainly true at ours, a lot of opportunities in terms of summer intensive scholarships, sometimes even offers beyond that, are handed out by our jury panels. And it might be that you just want more people to see you for the chance to get more opportunities to train.
So there are scholarships for summer, and are there invitations to year-round training programs? Do they happen at regionals, not just at a final?
For us, yes. And I know that the same was true at YGP. I believe most of them, California Dance Classics as well, I know I would hand out regional and UBC. So yes, there are often opportunities for further training that dancers can be considered for at the regionals and not just finals. So that is also an advantage. And that would, to me, that's a good justification for doing multiple regionals, the chance to be seen by multiple jury panels. It is more expensive, I think, than going to lots of summer intensive auditions, for example.
Mm.
However, at a summer intensive audition, you have an hour and a half class to show your stuff. Whereas at a competition, you've got, at least at ours, you have the classwork plus your prepared choreography on stage. So it's a slightly longer opportunity to be seen.
Yeah. So can you speak a little bit more about the types of offers that are offered at your regionals and at your finals as well?
At regionals, the majority of the offers that people get are for summer intensives, either acceptance or scholarships to summer intensives. That's a huge part of what people receive. But we have had, I know that last year at our North Carolina regional, a dancer was offered a company contract. We try and have our regionals at a time when artistic directors will be looking for a lot of artistic directors. If they see somebody that they like, they know that, the marketplace is broad. So we also have a lot of dancers that are invited for short stays to larger schools at regionals, but pretty much anything that we would offer at finals also gets offered at regionals. One of the big incentives for expanding into a regional competition was just we had the opportunity to connect more dancers with opportunities.
Building on that, we'd love to hear more about the job auditions for 16 plus dancers that you do. Do they lead to contracts or do they lead to invitations to take company class? Could you maybe talk our listeners through how that works and what that looks like for the majority of your dancers?
It is, it's often dependent on what the artistic director has to offer and what they're interested in. I have known several dancers who have gotten company contracts from those job auditions. And we very specifically for finals, we invite artistic directors and second company directors, especially to be on our final round jury. We try and comprise that not solely of school directors, but we really are trying to get the decision makers for employment at those job auditions. The focus is really to make it a company audition, that you have the opportunity in one shot to audition for 7 or 8 different companies to see if you can find one that fits.
That's wonderful.
We have a good track record of dancers getting job offers there at those auditions.
Can you talk about the structure? Is it mostly just a class or do people bring a variation prepared as well?
No, it's mostly a class. But then we have invited those artistic directors to come and watch the variations as well. But the actual audition is an audition class, usually taught by one of our sort of in-house teachers. So it tries to be a little bit less biased, so that it's not being taught by somebody that has an agenda. Usually, like we have a partnership with schools like the Herod Conservatory or a school that doesn't have a professional company attached to it. We'll have somebody from that school teach the class, so that it's really trying to support the dancers onto the professional level of their career.
It's about 11. You have 11 cities right now that you
Yes.
go into. Do you have plans to expand that at all?
Yes. Our first year, we had 6 cities. Last year, we had 8. This year, we are doing 11. We are looking to expand. This is the first year that actually we'll be doing 2 cities on the same weekend. I think we have 3 weekends in January where we have, that's the main reason why I won't be teaching all the classes anymore. I haven't figured out how to bilocate. And yes, we are looking to expand more. We want to try and find, we were just in Florida for most of life as a competition. So having moved into regionals, we would have some participation from especially West Coast schools, but not a lot. And so we're looking to expand perhaps into other venues in California, maybe Oregon next year. We also have had huge growth in Texas. We added Dallas this year, and both Dallas and Houston, if they're not full, they're almost full already. There's a good possibility that we could do another city in Texas and fill that up as well. Texas is just full of dancers, which is fantastic. And there are other regions. We're trying to find regions that maybe we haven't really had a presence in before, and move into those and try and find strategies to help raise awareness of our competition in those other cities. But we're a fairly small operation. There are only 2 full-time employees, Adriana Broad, who founded the competition all on her own. Well, her and her family. She and I do the majority of the work, organizing, getting everything ready. We're trying to build smart, and not outgrow our ability to do things in the personable and kind way that we really are committed to. But that doesn't mean that we aren't looking at other ways that we could expand in the future.
I want to go back for a second. You had mentioned something. We talked about students going to multiple regionals, and that might give them a leg up to then make it to finals. And this is kind of a 2-part question. The first part is, what do dancers need to do? What are the requirements to make it to finals? And then we had a question from a listener who said her daughter was at a competition, she placed, but did not get passed through to finals. Yet students who did not place did pass through to finals. So can you talk about your scoring and what it takes? And then also, can you comment on what she was asking about?
We don't have a set criteria. Like, it's not like if you get I remember the very early days of YGP. If you got a 95 in classical or contemporary, you're on to New York. As everything grows, you still have a finite amount of time at your finals, time and space. So the criteria has to keep getting tighter and tighter. We don't have a hard and fast criteria. I will say that Adriana, as the president, the founder, she watches all the competition. She watches all the dancers, also puts her own judgment. Sometimes she and the judges don't see exactly eye to eye. So there might be a dancer that didn't score as well from that panel of judges who Adriana sees potential in. So she might invite them to the finals. So it could be that somebody who did not place did get invited, but it was because there was sort of a founder's choice that was made in that instance.
We've been told by some judges that we've talked to that judges will never pass someone through to finals unless they thought they had the potential to be picked up by a school that might be there recruiting.
I mean, that could be the case. I would say that the decision about who is invited to finals does not really rest with the jury. It never did for me when I was judging. I wasn't the one who made those choices. It's really up to the competition itself about who makes so I think that the judges wouldn't score somebody a high enough score to make them stand out unless they thought they had potential.
Right.
But in terms of the actual decision to go to finals, that is almost, in my experience, it's been exclusively sort of up to the competition itself.
So at ADC, your top finalists do not automatically get through to finals. It really is up to your competition director to select those dancers that they want to push through to the next round.
I would say that I don't know that we've ever had like a Grand Prix winner in any city that didn't pass on to finals or wasn't at least invited. It's so, I know that it feels like this is a black box and parents are trying to peer into it and figure out what is the thing that I can do. There is no easy answer about what is the thing that you can do that will guarantee you a place at finals. My daughter competed at YGP and at a couple of other competitions for years. She got one invitation to finals. It happened to happen the year that she was also performing with Ballet West. So she had that trip to finals was kind of miserable for her as an individual because she had to take red eyes to New York and catch naps under tables. And it was not at all the experience that the kind of idealized experience that she hoped it would be. Ultimately, it didn't really end up mattering as much. I think that it's important to remember that the way to be successful in a career is, like you said earlier, always say yes to every possible gig that you can make work, and you got to play the numbers. You have to do competitions. You have to do lots of auditions. I went to upwards of 100 auditions in my professional career, and this is back in ancient times. There weren't dinosaurs anymore, but it was a long time ago. I got a grand total of two job offers from sort of traditional cattle call auditions. Mm-hmm. I got my first job because I was recommended by a director of a summer intensive to her friend who was director of a company. I was kind of hired sight unseen. Like I said, 2 job offers from all the auditions I ever did as a career. And I'm, a 6 foot tall male dancer. Think I'd be the demographic. You got to play the numbers, and you never know exactly what they're looking for that day.
It's really true. Can you talk about where you kind of think ballet competitions fit in the overall ballet ecosystem of a training path for a serious pre-professional dancer?
I think one of the best things is I would like to see ballet moving more away from the kind of cattle call audition. I'd like to see them, in the contemporary and modern dance world, quite often the path to a professional gig is an internship or taking company class for an extended period of time. That it feels like a lot of contemporary companies are very concerned with understanding who the dancer is as a more complete person than you can possibly find out in an hour and a half audition. If competitions can especially connect dancers with bigger schools, especially that are attached to professional companies, that is really, I think, the best way to a secure and more fulfilling career. You're going to be you're going to be taken to the school that really is a good fit for you, whether that's physically or artistically. And then you're going to have the opportunity to show how you work on a consistent daily basis over months or sometimes even years. And so I think that if we can continue to be a pipeline that connects dancers with those sort of more broad opportunities to present themselves, I think that can be really successful.
I agree with you. My daughter got her current job. It was right out of school, and she went to their company experience for 2 weeks at Pittsburgh Ballet Theater. And by the second week, the new artistic director called her into his office and was like, "We love you. I want to watch the show and see you perform, but we have one apprentice spot left, and we would really like to hire you." And she didn't go in. She had a position for the next year. She was set, the whole thing. So, I think you're right in that you just right place, right time. Oh, yeah. Someone sees you and they say, "Oh, I really like what you're doing here," and making that fit.
Always takes luck. It really does.
It does.
Luck favors the prepared, but it always takes luck.
Yes.
The way to get luckier is to be open to lots of opportunities. I mean, my first job was as a dancer with Louisville Ballet. My first day in Louisville, Kentucky was my first day as a dancer with Louisville Ballet. I didn't know the city. I didn't know where I was going to sleep that night, literally.
Oh my gosh.
And I just said, yes.
Right.
Pay me to dance, I'll do it. It was.
I'm your man. It sounds great to me.
and I know for a fact that it terrified my parents. And my advice to parents is, strap in. It's going to be a bumpy ride, and it's terrifying. And my daughter's mom and I were both professional ballet dancers. We spent our whole lives, and we've both been teaching for years and years and years. It was no less terrifying for us. In some ways, it was, I don't know. I can't speak for anybody else's perspective, but it was pretty terrifying because we knew exactly how hard it is to get a job. So I think that it doesn't. If you as a parent are scared witless about your students' choices, know that there's no way to alleviate that. You just got to learn how to have a different relationship with anxiety.
That is real.
Yeah, it never goes away. So.
Does not. That is so very true. So there is a belief that many of these competitions are highly political. What do you say to someone who makes this claim? And this question did come from one of our listeners.
What do you mean by political? Do you mean that some dancers are chosen because they fit this or that criteria? Yes. Are some dancers chosen because their teacher has a relationship with that school or company? Yes, of course. I literally am stretching my memory to think of an instance where any dancer was talked about in a way that we can't have that dancer because they come from this school. I've never seen the politics work negatively against a dancer. And it could be that happens, and I've just never seen it, but I have judged and coached and been part of competitions for decades. And I have never seen a dancer excluded because of politics. I have seen dancers get opportunities because their parents danced with this artistic director or their teacher knew that artistic director. So, of course, but that goes back to what I said earlier. Networking is important. The way you behave in every situation is important. I think that political is used very derogatorily a lot of the times. But if you think about politics as just a way of negotiating relationships, then of course it's a factor in everything.
Sure. So, what's some advice to someone who's coming in as an independent and they do feel like, oh my gosh, I don't have any of these connections. I still want to come in and compete and do well. Is that going to hinder me? Does it prevent me from doing well because I don't have these kinds of connections, even if I dance well?
I mean, I've seen independents do very well. I've seen them get opportunities offered to them. I don't think it's necessarily a hindrance. I'll wonder sometimes why somebody is an independent. Nobody is truly an independent, in my opinion, because ballet is not something you can teach yourself. It is, I don't care how naturally an autodidact you are. There's no way that you can pick up a book and learn how to be a ballet dancer. So everybody comes from somewhere. I don't think it's a disadvantage in terms of the way you are perceived to be an independent necessarily. But I would again say that the biggest advice I can give to young dancers is work on your network, work on your technique is most important. But working on your network is a really close second. It is who you know, and if you are uncomfortable or it's not natural for you to make those connections, you got to push yourself to do it. You have to make yourself. I'm a deeply introverted person, actually. After a weekend of ADC, I will tend to spend the next day sitting in my room with the lights dim, watching Office reruns to recharge my batteries. I know that a big part of my job and my career is also to make a lot of connections with a lot of strangers. And I do love it. It's not that I don't love it. It's just not what's natural to me. And I think that finding strategies that will get you out there, push yourself to network, especially if it's not natural for you, is a really, really important skill to have as a performing artist. I taught for a long time at Point Park University in Pittsburgh, which has a huge musical theater program too. Musical theater is a very different beast. And I think those people are much more used. I remember riding the elevators with the musical theater majors early in the morning was always a little trying because they would already be on and performing and sing Sondheim at 8 o'clock in the morning at full voice in tiny little elevators. And that's not how we ballet dancers are. But there's something to be learned from that. Yeah, there's something to be learned from the more traditional competition schools. Those kids, I've had several students who came from competition backgrounds, and I've taught at competition studios. There's a fearlessness that those kids have that I think we could learn something from in ballet. If you just don't tell people, I think sometimes ballet gets put on such a pedestal that it's incredibly intimidating, even to people who've been doing it for a long time. And if you just don't let people know that it's intimidating and terrifying and just expect a lot of them, you can get interesting results. So,
since we're kind of on the peel back the curtain a little bit, what are some other myths around competitions that you would like to dispel?
That competition organizers are in it for the money. That's actually one that we get a lot. That, oh, you're just doing this because you're trying to extract as much as possible. It's just not the case. Not even in an organization that's as huge as YGP. I've been intimately involved with that, and I've seen it's an incredibly expensive endeavor, no matter where you go. The driving force behind running a competition is about providing opportunities. It is not about extracting money. At least in the ballet competitions I've been a part of. Almost all of the ones I've been a part of that I've had a chance to sort of see behind the veil, there are nonprofits, and they're running at what is I would say an appropriate and fairly modest profit margin. My dance history teacher in college, she used to say that ballet companies should run $1 in the black every year. If you've got $3 left over, you should have spent that $2 on something more rhinestones. appropriate thing for a nonprofit is to invest as much as possible in. We certainly try and do that. I think that we bring in good guest artists, we bring in good jury members, we try and provide wonderful performance opportunities for our competitors. We're not trying to soak anybody. That's a big thing. The other thing is that winning a competition is a key to success, to a successful career. It's just as likely that you'll see a dancer who spends years winning all the competitions that they become a part of and burning out, deciding at 17 or 18 that it's just what they've always done really didn't feed their soul in a way that they thought it would. Find a different motivation than winning. Because it's not a guarantee. You can win everything at a competition, and it could just not lead to anything ultimately.
So what do you think ballet competitions do exceptionally well, especially ADC?
I would say that we provide an opportunity for everyone to see what the state of the art is, to have a good external validation for their training, but also to see what are the things that I need to work on, to see what is my peer group capable of, and what level do I need to train to if I want to have possibility for a professional career. I think that's a really big thing. And because we travel all over the country, we see dancers and we invite dancers to finals from all over the country, you really are always getting the chance to evaluate yourself if you're being honest against people in your peer group. I think that's a huge opportunity. It's something that happens in summer intensives too, but I think that it's good to have these moments where you're comparing your prepared choreography to other people's prepared choreography. You're seeing what works and what doesn't. I think that's something that we do a pretty good job of.
What changes have you seen in the ballet competition world? You're talking about how it gives kids a chance to kind of stack themselves against other kids and see where they fit in. But, you've been a judge and you've been involved in the ballet competition world for quite a while now. What have you seen that's changed?
When I was growing up, there was the Jackson competition, there was the Prix de Lausanne, there was Varna, Moscow. There were maybe 4 or 5 competitions worldwide. There has been an explosion, especially in the last 10 years, I would say. I want to say YGP started in 98. ADC started in 2004. I think that's been the biggest thing, is that there's just a lot more of them, and I think that the great thing about that is it has definitely raised the profile of ballet. Every time there's a ballet event, I think it's good. I think all boats rise with a rising tide. The more people are aware that ballet is even a thing, especially ballet beyond Nutcracker, because that is still most people's interaction with ballet is that one ballet that was choreographed in 1892. That is the sum total of what they know about ballet. Just having a higher profile for the art form has been one of the biggest changes I've seen. And I don't know if that's a change in the competition so much as the impact that they have had on the world. I do think that the explosive growth of competitions, though, speaks to there is a market. And I think that that's a good thing. I think that people who are involved in competitions as a competitor will go on to either be professional dancers or patrons of the art form. I would say that the growth of the ecosystem has been the biggest change.
With that, and with the explosion of growth that you have seen, what do you think ballet competitions can do to help serve more students? Because the cost barrier is pretty prohibitive for a lot of families.
And again, going back to my earlier point, that really the margins are not very big in dance competitions. The cost of entry is mostly covering the costs of running the competition. So I don't know that there's a lot that we can do to reduce those. Trying to create regional events in more areas of the country, so maybe we can reduce travel costs, would be a big thing that we could do, and that we are trying to do. We're trying to go to where the people are. I did it myself as a coach. When I first started participating in YGP, I would go to Philadelphia or Indianapolis, and I eventually talked them into coming to Pittsburgh just so I could sleep in my own bed at night. Did mean that more of my students could participate because their parents didn't have to pay for a hotel and for the travel costs.
What would you like to see change in ballet competitions?
There are certain variations that I would love eliminate permanently. But again, that's my personal choice. Like if I never saw Fairy Doll again, it would be fine with me. And anytime somebody brings something from the Nutcracker, but again, that's my personal bias. I didn't grow up dancing Nutcracker, so I don't have a nostalgic connection with it. I love contemporary ballet, and I would love to see more contemporary solos and contemporary work from really gifted choreographers, ballet-based choreographers. I think that a lot of opportunity is missed because contemporary solos tend to be fairly generic or fairly gymnastic or acrobatic. They don't have a lot of artistic merit. And again, you're getting into really fuzzy, subjective areas when you're talking about that. Focusing on the storytelling and the artistry in a contemporary solo I would love to see more of that. When a contemporary solo really surprises me, really takes me out of the moment. What I often see is the time limit is 2 minutes and 30 seconds. So the solo is 2 minutes and 30 seconds. At the end of that, nothing has been really said. We've seen how flexible you are, and we've seen that you can do lots and lots of pirouettes. And I like flexibility, and I love pirouettes. But I would love it if there was a focus on the important element of abstract storytelling. Each movement should have a more significant meaning than just the movement. We're not a sport. It's not about making a goal. It's a very easy objective thing. Whether the ball has gone into the goal or not. That's not what we do. And so it's much harder target to hit, perhaps, but focusing on creating more important storytelling in the contemporary would be really good. I would love to see the day, and I'm hoping that it'll happen in my lifetime. I would love to see the quote unquote classical repertoire that can be performed grow to include more 20th century choreographers. It would be wonderful if dancers could compete Balanchine. It's choreography. Probably won't happen in my lifetime, but it would be nice if it did. Just because, for example, Balanchine's choreography is in the repertoire of almost every ballet company in the country. Dancers being able to prepare for that and also to present it would be really nice. That might just be pie in the sky, but I think it would be good. There are other 20th century choreographers too who made significant contributions to the art of ballet. The sort of required repertoire that it's really heavy on 19th century Imperial Russian ballet, which also favors a certain kind of training over others. I would love to see a broader opportunity for dancers to find choreography in that quote unquote classical categories that speaks to the growth of ballet over the last century. And we really don't have that.
The thing that is always shocking to me is how important improv is. Have you guys ever thought about having an improv category?
I honestly would love it. I think it would terrify most ballet dancers. I was raised in a studio where we had Graham-based improvisation twice a week from the time I was 11. That's why I became a choreographer. I love it. Contemporary dancers, a lot of Mozart's operas include improvisation. It's not a skill set that's reserved to one art form or another, or one genre or another. It's just as important. So I would love to see that in ballet. I think it would be a more radical transformation than perhaps a competition is in a position to do. But I think it would be wonderful. I have been in a couple of auditions. I got to sit on an audition at Juilliard where there was an improvisation section. That was part of YGP's Dance in Higher Education. But the students were given a chance to improvise. And it's so fascinating to see people who are confident and brave enough to make those choices in the moment in front of strangers. It would be great if we could somehow do that. I don't know that anybody really wants competitions to be longer than they already are.
Well, no, it's more like about building skill set, right? And doing that really scary thing in the beginning, right? 2 anecdotes. My daughter's, one of her best friends went to the Ballet Zurich open audition that they had this past winter. And one of the sections was improv. And then my daughter this year, Jennifer Archibald, just came in and she said, I want you all to improv right here in the middle of the choreography. And I always kind of frowned on all the improv they did at contemporary at San Francisco Ballet and thought it was a waste of time. But honestly, it gave her such a tool set. I think more opportunities for students to do that because so much contemporary work is coming in.
As a choreographer, my process has changed recently. The last couple of times I've created pieces, I have started with improvisational. I've been borrowing very directly from the contemporary world.
Yeah.
And I've had the dancers improvise first to create movement sequences, and then I will shape those movement sequences. You get so much more buy-in from the dancers that way. But I also just think you get more interesting choreography.
Yeah.
If there are more voices, it's more like conducting a choir and trying to blend the voices. Ballet has got to keep evolving, or it will just become a museum piece. And I do feel like that perhaps we're at a moment where that's going to become more not just accepted, but that's what people want. That's what dancers want to do. That's what audiences want to watch. It would be great if we didn't have contemporary dance audiences and ballet dance audiences. And I actually feel like a lot of the times these days, it's the ballet teachers and companies who like to perch in our ivory towers and think that you have to say yes, and it would be much more entertaining, I think.
And it might make dancers feel more connected to the work rather than it's such an autocracy if they were able to contribute and feel like they had a little bit of a voice.
Ballet is so hierarchical,
yes.
Which is very problematic in a lot of ways. So, but maybe that's changing. I don't know. There's a real inflection point happening right now. So many companies are changing leadership, and I see so many more women, so many more people of color being put into artistic director roles. I don't think that can help but have a major impact on ballet. And I'm very excited for what that could lead to.
Yes, no, I agree. And so can we talk about something else that's kind of had a big impact on ballet, which is social media? Do you guys look at Insta-famous kids? How does social media play a role in ADC? What does that take into consideration in scoring at all? And how does social media play in?
Has nothing to do with scoring at all. I think that in terms of community building, social media has had a hugely important and will continue to have a hugely important impact on the art form. And I think a positive one. I am not somebody who thinks that social media relationships are not real relationships. I found you on social media. We connected, and now we're making this podcast episode together. Every tool that can connect you with other people with similar interests is important and powerful. The reach of social media at its best can be incredibly creative. Again, you got to look at social media as a tool to the ultimate goal of creating more networking and building your career. And the people that I love to follow on social, I follow Skylar Brandt. I think her Instagram is fantastic. And some of it is just her beautiful work as a dancer. Some of it is her goofiness with her sister. Some of it is the hard work of training that she does. She does a really good job of curating a very complete picture of herself as an artist. It's entertaining, but also, Skylar, if you're listening, keep it up. I love watching.
On the flip side of that, though, do you think it's giving young kids an outsized idea or a skewed idea of what they should be doing at a certain age because it is such a highly curated viewing platform?
I like to think that one of the things that can be very empowering is seeing somebody who is fundamentally a lot like you doing things that you didn't think were possible. A peer group is a really important training tool. If you see somebody who inspires you to work towards a specific technical goal, I think it's a good thing, no matter what. Like any tool, it can definitely be, just because you hit your thumb with a hammer doesn't mean you should throw out hammers. You should just learn how to use it better, more carefully. I don't necessarily know that it fosters unrealistic expectations so much as it can show you what human possibility is. We're amazing creatures, and we have amazing potential in lots of ways. To go back to Skylar, what I like is she often posts videos of her grueling cross-training. Yeah, she can do amazing things, but she does it because she works amazingly hard. And so when you see somebody who has a good kind of complete picture of themselves presented on social media, I think it can be very empowering. And I often will see young dancers, they'll sometimes focus more on just showing the things that they do well, but I will also see them showing the work that they do in the studios. And I would encourage your listeners, when they are thinking about how they present themselves on social media, show the work too, and show something of your personality. But remember that, once you put it up there, it's going to be seen forever by somebody. So you want to be mindful of what you're doing and assume that it will always be seen in the worst possible light. Hopefully it won't, but you have to assume that. So you have to really think carefully about the way you're presenting yourself. But I think that it can be a wonderful connecting tool and also a wonderful inspirational tool. So not a bad thing necessarily.
That was really a great way to end this. I thank you so much. We really appreciate your time. This was just a fantastic conversation.
Sure.
If you liked what you heard on this episode, please take a moment and help us spread the word. Follow us and leave us a review on your preferred podcast platform. Tell a friend and share on your social media. Also, now that your dancer has returned from their summer intensives, please head over to ballethelpdesk.com and leave an anonymous review of the program. Help your fellow dance parents by letting them learn all about the good, the bad, and everything in between. To stay in the loop on all of our latest content, subscribe to our newsletter at ballethelpdesk.com and follow us on Facebook and YouTube. Until next time, have a great day.